TomoNews presents
I Am Death.
And, you shouldn't be here yet.
Mourners in Zimbabwe who were gathered around the body of a friend they believed to be dead got the fright of their lives when the man inexplicably came back to life. 34-year-old Brighton Damazante had been on sick leave from his job at a bus company for some time. His condition deteriorated until one day his wife reported him dead. She laid him in a coffin in their home so friends and family could pay their respects. As people queued to say their final words, Zante's employer noticed his legs begin to twitch. Believing the man had returned from the dead to haunt them, people ran screaming from the room as his wife went to his side. An ambulance arrived within 7 minutes to rush the man to hospital. After 2 days on life support, Zante returned to the living, telling amazed journalists, "I feel okay now." This isn't the first bizarre resurrection in the country. In February, a prostitute who died while servicing a client sprang back to life, screaming, "You want to kill me," just as police placed her in a metal coffin. Now that's killer sex.
Time of death declaration and utter fail. Woman still alive. In Germany, an undertaker was shocked when one of his clients pushed open the coffin lid and asked where she was. In fact, he was so shocked he passed out. After returning to his senses, the man realized it wasn't the start of the zombie apocalypse and called emergency services. Paramedics arrived and confirmed that the 92-year-old woman did indeed have a pulse. She was then rushed to hospital where she died again 2 days later. The nursing home staff were interviewed and questioned how one of their residents came to be diagnosed as dead, when she in fact wasn't. One of the staff had reportedly discovered the elderly woman in the morning and contacted their local on-staff doctor to check on her. The doctor pronounced her death and arrangements were made to move her body to the morgue, where the undertaker got the shock of his life. Hopefully, the 92-year-old grandmother won't have a moment of déjà vu waking up in a coffin. Again.
Zombie cat reappears 5 days after being buried. Bart the cat is one lucky Florida feline. In a storyline straight out of the movie Pet Sematary, Bart was dead and buried, literally. But miraculously, he turned up alive and well a few days after being put to rest. 24-month-old Bart was trying to cross the street near his home in Tampa, Florida, one day a couple of weeks ago when he was tragically hit by a passing car. Owner Ellis Hudson found Bart lifeless in a pool of blood, and with serious injuries to his head, he and his neighbour did the decent thing and buried Bart at the side of the road. Little did they know that Bart was not dead. So using one of his fabled 9 lives, the persistent pussy clawed his way back into the world, giving Hudson the shock of his life 5 days later when a neighbour found the now zombie Bart nearby and brought him home. Bart is now in the care of the local Humane Society and is being nursed back to health, even though his injuries mean he is likely to lose one eye. No word yet on whether there are any ancient Native American burial grounds nearby.
Pregnant teenage bride buried alive, gets rescued, dies again. 16-year-old Neysi Perez was buried alive in La Entrada, Honduras. She was 3 months pregnant and fell unconscious in her bathroom during the night after reportedly having a panic attack from hearing gunfire outside her home. Her religious parents called a priest to perform an exorcism because they thought she was possessed by a demon. When that didn't work, they took her to a hospital where she was pronounced dead 3 hours later. Perez had recently been married, so she was buried in her wedding dress. When her husband went to visit her grave the next day, he heard screaming coming from inside the coffin. He ran to get help and relatives came to rescue, smashing the mausoleum open and taking out the coffin. She reportedly had bruises and scratches on her face from trying to escape the grave after being buried alive. She was unconscious and taken to the hospital inside the coffin. Doctors were unable to resuscitate her and she was pronounced dead again.
Man dead, then he miraculously comes back to life. In Hubei, located in central China, the family of a man doctors had pronounced dead was preparing to bury their loved one when they noticed that the corpse was breathing and weeping. The family rushed Mr. Guo, age 45, back to the hospital as quickly as possible, where doctors were shocked to discover they were wrong. Mr. Guo was a heavy smoker and had been since he was 16. He was known to smoke at least 2 packs of cigarettes a day and could often finish a single pack in just 3 hours. 3 months ago, Mr. Guo had been talking to friends and smoking when he suddenly collapsed. His friends had rushed him to hospital, and doctors said Mr. Gweru had suffered severe cerebral hemorrhaging and that his chances for survival were less than 5%. Mr. Gweru remained in a coma for almost 3 months. Then one morning, the doctors pronounced him dead and informed his family they could take him home to be buried. Who'd have thought he'd surprise them all and resurrect himself? Doctors said they will have to wait until Mr. Gweru wakes up to assess the extent of the damage to his brain. Cerebral hemorrhages can cause extensive brain damage that will affect a person's speech, memories, and physical coordination. But if Mr. Gweru wakes up hungry for brains, everyone better be ready to run.
Dead Greek woman heard screaming and banging in her coffin. A 45-year-old woman was reportedly buried alive and heard screaming and banging from inside her coffin in a Greek cemetery on Thursday. The unidentified woman was declared dead by doctors treating her for cancer. However, shortly after the last of her relatives left the cemetery after her burial, the woman reportedly woke up and started banging and screaming inside the coffin. Nearby residents and children reportedly heard her shouting for help from inside the grave and called the authorities. Cemetery workers desperately plowed the fresh grave to unearth the woman, but she apparently had suffocated to death inside the coffin. However, a doctor who examined the woman's body found her to be in a state of rigor mortis and found no evidence of asphyxiation in the coffin.
Grandfather returns home months after family had him cremated. Imagine you went for a walk one day, had a few drinks along the way, and came home months later to realize everyone thought you were dead. That's what happened to 74-year-old Miguel Angel Gomar de Luna in Chihuahua, Mexico, who now has to prove he's still alive. The old man was living at a nursing home late last year when one day he snuck away and did not return. On Christmas Day, his family was alerted that he'd gone missing. They searched for weeks, but there was no trace of him anywhere. After some time had passed, police recovered a badly decomposed body of a man that fit Miguel's description. The body was difficult to identify, but Miguel's daughter was told if they could not confirm it was him, the body would not be released to the family. She signed papers to claim that the body was indeed that of her dad's and held a funeral days later, the body cremated. You can imagine the shock they must have felt when on February 24th, police contacted her to say her father was found on the street, alive. When he was brought home, he was in rough shape, bandages around his head and scars on his face. When asked what happened, he said he'd just gone for a walk. He'd also reportedly been drinking the entire time. Talk about a bender. His family grateful for his return, they're now tasked with reclaiming his identity, seeing as he's been legally declared dead.
Dead man comes back to life inside body bag. A 78-year-old man from Jackson, Mississippi was pronounced dead by a coroner and a nurse too early. In fact, a whole 2 weeks too early. It's February. Suffering from end-stage cardiovascular disease, 78-year-old farmer Walter Williams is in trouble. A coroner and a nurse are on duty in the hospice where he lives. They check his pulse but feel nothing. He's pronounced dead. His nephew sees them close the body bag. About to be embalmed some 5 hours later, the body bag begins to stir. The kicking becomes stronger and the undertakers rush to open the bag. Williams is raced to hospital. But the old fellow was only able to juke death once. He died peacefully at home in the early hours of March 13. Doctors say Williams suffered from extremely low blood sugar, a condition which, combined with his medications, may have caused his pulse to slow so much that the medical staff were unable to detect it, leading to the error.
3-year-old girl revived at her own funeral, now dead. A toddler, previously seen waking up at her own funeral at a church in the Philippines over the weekend, in a video that has since gone viral, has now reportedly officially been pronounced dead. Footage from Sunday's ceremony in the city of Aurora shows the 3-year-old girl, who'd been suffering from a severe fever and was pronounced dead the previous day, stunning family members who were about to bury her. A neighbor reportedly noticed the tiny child's head moving inside the coffin before noticing she was breathing. The incredible video shows the infant's father quickly lifting her up from the coffin and covering her with a blanket. In a tragic twist to the amazing and uplifting story, however, the child didn't survive long. She was officially declared dead by a local doctor on Monday, who reportedly found no signs of life.
Tracy, you are going to die.
What? No!
When I tell you who I'm dating. Squeaky Fromm.
It sucks when you're misdiagnosed by a doctor. It sucks even more when the doctor mistakes you for a corpse. 41-year-old Colleen Burns was rushed to the hospital when she overdosed on some Xanax and Benadryl. It's unclear how the doctors at the hospital misdiagnosed death, but they pronounced her clinically dead. They obtained permission to harvest Burns' organs and were all ready to slice her open when she opened her eyes on the operating table, no doubt scaring the crap out of everyone. Turns out Burns had only lapsed into a deep coma and wasn't dead at all. The hospital discharged Burns 2 weeks later without even an explanation for how they could have mistaken her for dead in the first place. After the health department said that doctors ignored signs that Burns was still alive, the hospital was slapped with a fine of just $6,000.
An Ohio man who had died for more than 45 minutes befuddled doctors when he miraculously came back to life. Tony Yaley was pronounced dead on August 5th after nearly an hour with no heartbeat and no pulse. His son Lawrence, however, refused to accept the doctor's verdict and ran to tell his father he couldn't die that day. And then something magical happened. The 37-year-old diesel mechanic's heart monitor began to show signs of life. He was restored to his human form, and he and Alright, so maybe we exaggerated that last part. We've got to stop watching so many Disney movies.